"Ma'am, kindly step off my asphalt," I said, voice steady as a surveyor's line. She burst into laughter, that high-pitched cackle reserved for HOA presidents who think rules are their personal throne. But when I pulled out the deed proving the entire street was mine, her face crumpled like a crumpled fine notice, and the cops she'd called turned their sirens on her empire instead. It all started with a whisper of wind through perfectly manicured hedges, the kind that hides the rot beneath. My name's Alex Rivera, 45, ex-urban planner turned quiet retiree, the guy who'd mapped out half the county's subdivisions before deciding I'd had enough of bureaucratic battles. I'd inherited this cozy bungalow in Willow Creek Estates from my aunt, a fierce widow who'd bought the plot back when the neighborhood was just dirt roads and dreams. The house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, older than the rest, with a weathered porch and a yard that didn't bow to the latest landscaping trends. Willow Creek looked idyllic on postcards, symmetrical lawns, matching beige garages, and those little flags fluttering at uniform heights. But scratch the surface, and you'd find the air thick with unspoken rules, enforced by the iron fist of the homeowners association. They called it community harmony, but it felt more like a cult of conformity, where deviating from the approved paint palette could get you shunned faster than a bad barbecue. I moved in on a crisp autumn morning, the lake nearby shimmering like fool's gold. Neighbors nodded politely from their driveways, sizing me up with those suburban smiles that said, "Welcome, but don't mess with our vibe." I kept to myself, fixing up the place bit by bit, repainting the shutters a deep forest green that matched the old oaks, letting the grass grow a tad wild for the bees. Peaceful, right? Wrong. The first sign of trouble slithered under my door 2 weeks later. A pristine envelope with the HOA's embossed seal, like it was from royalty. "Welcome to Willow Creek Estates," it read in flowery script. "Your annual dues of $1,500 are now due. Failure to comply may result in restrictions on community amenities." I chuckled, thinking it was a mix-up. My aunt's deed was crystal clear. The HOA's jurisdiction ended at the property line, one lot shy of mine. This place predated their charter by a decade. So, I penned a polite reply, "Appreciate the warm welcome, but per county records, my parcel isn't under your purview. Wishing you all the best in your endeavors." Sealed it, dropped it in their community mailbox, and figured that was that. But oh, how naive. People like Vivian Hargrove, the HOA president, didn't build their mini-empires on acceptance. Vivian was a vision of suburban supremacy. Mid-50s, pearls gleaming against her cashmere sweaters, hair in a helmet of highlights that screamed, "I chair the garden committee." She paraded as the guardian of standards. But really, she was a control freak wrapped in politeness, the type who'd fine you for a crooked mailbox while smiling like she was doing you a favor. Within days, she showed up on my doorstep, clipboard in hand, flanked by her minion, Ted, her nephew and self-proclaimed enforcement coordinator, a burly ex-salesman with a mustache that looked like it auditioned for a 70s cop show. "Mr. Rivera," she cooed, her voice dripping honey over venom. "We seem to have a little misunderstanding. All residents contribute to our beautiful community. Your aunt must have overlooked the updated bylaws." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "No misunderstanding, Vivian. I've got the plat maps. This lot's grandfathered out." She tilted her head, that pitying look pros use on amateurs. "Well, bless your heart. We'll sort it after you remit payment. It's for the greater good. Think of the Holiday Lights Fund." Ted nodded vigorously, like a bobblehead on steroids. I thanked them and closed the door gently, but inside, I felt the first twinge of that old planner's instinct. This wasn't about dues, it was about dominance. The newsletters started arriving next, glossy pamphlets stuffed with friendly reminders that read like veiled threats. All garages must be painted in approved neutrals to preserve aesthetic unity. Lawn heights exceeding 3 inches invite pests and disharmony. Remember, harmony is a shared responsibility. Report non-compliance anonymously. I filed them away, noting the passive-aggressive tone that made harmony sound like a euphemism for obey or else. Then came the inspection. One sunny afternoon, I spotted Ted lurking across the street in his pickup, binoculars glinting. He snapped photos of my green shutters, my slightly overgrown hedge, even my recycling bin that wasn't the regulation blue. Just routine checks, he called when I waved him over. Aunt Viv says everyone's gotta play by the rules. Ted, I replied evenly, your aunt's rules stop at my fence. This isn't her playground. He smirked. We'll see about that, buddy. Non-compliance has consequences. That night, I set up discreet cameras around the property, not out of paranoia, but preparation. I'd seen this dance before in my planning days. HOAs weaponizing ignorance, turning neighbors into spies with promises of community points or whatever nonsense they peddled. It escalated subtly at first, like a pot simmering before the boil. Anonymous complaints flooded the county office about my unsightly yard, claims of weeds that were actually wildflowers, a fence that obstructed views. What views? The identical houses. Fines trickled in: $100 for non-standard exterior colors, $200 for potential safety hazards from my aunt's old bird feeder. I contested each one with copies of my deed, but the bureaucracy moved slow, and Vivian's network ran deep. She volunteered on the zoning board. After all, neighbors started whispering. At the community potluck I skipped, I heard through the grapevine that I was that new guy causing drama, refusing to chip in like a good neighbor. One evening, Mrs. Ellis from next door knocked, her face pinched. Alex, they're saying you're lowering property values. Vivian's circulating a petition. I invited her in for coffee. Petition for what? Me to paint my house beige. She fidgeted. If we don't sign, she hints at audits on our own homes. It's easier to go along. I nodded, not blaming her. Vivian's game was fear-mongering 101. Divide and conquer, make compliance feel like safety. But I documented everything: the petitions, the whispers, even the late-night drive-bys where Ted's truck idled too long outside my window. Then the harassment amped up, laced with that dark humor only suburbia can brew. One morning, I woke to find my mailbox spray-painted beige. Sloppy job, drips everywhere, with a note, courtesy of the HOA Beautification Committee. I laughed, bitter, imagining Vivian directing Ted like a bad spy movie. Make it match. Dear nephew, I cleaned it off, but not before snapping photos. Phone calls started, blocked numbers at odd hours. Pay up, or things get messy, a gruff voice growled one night. Another, nobody likes a freeloader. Rivera. I recorded them all, building my digital fortress. Vivian knocked again, this time with a final notice lean threat. Mr. Rivera, she said, her smile tight as a noose. This is for your own good. Join us, and the fines disappear. I met her gaze. Vivian, maintenance doesn't mean you own my soul or my shutters. She huffed. You'll regret this isolationist attitude. We're a family here. Family? I echoed mildly. Families don't spy and sabotage. She stormed off, pearls clacking like tiny accusations. That week, they installed a sign at the cul-de-sac entrance. Private road, HOA access only, bolted right into the asphalt. My asphalt, as it turned out. I stood there at dusk, wind whipping the fresh paint smell, realizing this was peak absurdity, a group fining people for a road they didn't pay taxes on, all while preaching responsibility. Sleepless nights followed, but not from fear, from focus. I pored over my aunt's old files in the attic, dusty boxes of maps and journals. She'd fought a similar battle years ago, noting in her sharp script, "These paper tyrants think signatures trump sweat." But land remembers its roots. There it was, a penciled strip on the 1980s survey, labeling the cul-de-sac road as Rivera right-of-way. My heart raced. The HOA had squatted on it for decades, claiming it via adverse possession nonsense. But they'd never paid a dime in taxes. I digitized everything, visited the county clerk, old Mr. Patel, who chuckled, "Your aunt warned me about these HOA folks. Still in your name, son. They've been freeloading, armed with fresh prints." I waited. Vivian's pettiness peaked. More complaints. A towed car mistake. Mine. From my own driveway. Even rumors I was antisocial at the neighborhood app chat. Neighbors averted eyes. Kids steered clear. But I stayed calm, the observer in the storm, knowing their overreach was digging their grave. The boil hit when flyers announced an emergency community meeting to address non-compliance threats. Vivian's masterpiece. Accusations I'd vandalized HOA property, their sign on my road. I tipped off a local blogger, Jamie Torres, who posed as a resident. "Mind if I crash?" she emailed. "Love a good HOA roast." "Front row," I replied. That Saturday, the cul-de-sac buzzed like a bad block party. Chairs, podium, Vivian in her power cardigan, Ted pacing like a wannabe bouncer. About 40 neighbors milled, murmuring. I lingered in my driveway, hands pocketed, cameras rolling. Vivian tapped the mic. "Fellow residents, we're gathered because one individual's selfishness endangers our harmony. Mr. Rivera has ignored dues, defaced our signage, and flouted standards that keep Willow Creek pristine." Murmurs swelled. She pointed at me. "Care to defend your anarchy?" I stepped forward, voice level. "Not anarchy, Vivian. Just facts." "I'm not in your HOA," gasped. She signaled Ted, who dialed dramatically. "Officers en route." "This ends now." Sirens wailed. 2 cruisers pulling up. Deputies emerged, badges shining. "Problem?" one asked. Vivian pounced. "Arrest him for trespass and vandalism on our road." The deputy eyed me. I smiled faintly. "Gentlemen, before that, check who owns this pavement." I handed over the deed, stamped fresh. The wind fluttered it as the deputy read, "Rivera Holdings LLC." His brow furrowed. "Ma'am," he said to Vivian, "you're the one trespassing. This road's his. Tax records confirm no HOA payments in years." Pin drop silence. Vivian's face twisted comically, pearls heaving. "Impossible. We've maintained it. Maintenance ain't ownership," the deputy drawled. "Especially when you're dodging taxes." Jamie stepped up, recorder out. For the blog, HOA charges dues for a road they don't own? Neighbors erupted. Where'd our money go? Fraud. Ted stammered. Aunt Viv. This is bad. Vivian clutched her clipboard. A technicality. Our attorney. A sleek car screeched up. Out tumbled Harlan Voss, HOA treasurer. I ask you. Even with maintenance rights, I cut in smoothly. Statute 72-14. Maintenance doesn't grant title without deed transfer. I drafted that clause back in my planning days. Laughter bubbled, dark, satisfying. The crowd turned, applauding as deputies advised HOA suspension. Vivian's empire crumbled in real time, her harmony exposed as hollow control. The aftermath was swift, delicious chaos. County audit unearthed $78,000 in misallocated funds, dues siphoned for Vivian's administrative retreats, fancy spas. She faced fines for false liens, suspension from any board. Harlan got fraud charges. Ted lost his enforcement gig after his stalking clips went viral on Jamie's blog. Headlines screamed, HOA boss loses road she never owned. Homeowner flips the script. Neighbors apologized with pies and handshakes. We were blind, Mrs. Ellis said. I sued the board quietly. Won enough to repave the road solar style, plant maples, and erect a sign. Open access courtesy of the true owner. No gates. Just freedom. Willow Creek breathed easier. Rules loosened. Community real now. My aunt's bench by the lake got a plaque. Truth maps the way. As sunsets gilded the water. I reflected. This wasn't revenge. It was recalibration. Proving powers in patience. Not posturing. But here's the twist that lingers. In a world where HOAs preach community while picking pockets, was Vivian the villain, or just a symptom of a system that rewards busybodies over boundaries? You tell me, was she wrong for enforcing harmony, or was I the disruptor for demanding proof? Share below. Who's the real Karen here?